Okay, scholars, in this lesson, we are going to be practicing understanding plot. So the last week in school, we talked about how the plot is the series of events that make up a story, and we use the story Cinderella to help us understand that. So in today's lesson, we are going to be looking at a fable. We'll talk about what that is here in just a second. But in your folder, you will have this graphic organizer. If you are a remote scholar, you will be filling in the graphic organizer digitally in your Nearpod. But if you are a face-to-face scholar, if you will go ahead and grab this paper out of your folder so that you have it with you. Okay, so let's look up here at the top. Go ahead and make sure you write your name. But it says, what is the plot of the story? And so we know that the plot is the series of events that make up the story. And we've talked about this in class, how we don't want to tell every single detail. When we are retelling a story or explaining a story, we only really want to focus on the main details, okay? So the goal for this lesson is that you will be able to hear a story and you will be able to fill in these 5 components on the graphic organizer. You will be able to tell me the setting, which is where the story takes place, who the characters are, what happened in the beginning of the story, what happened in the middle of the story, and what happened in the ending of the story. Okay, so let's get started. So last week we talked about how stories are fairy tales, and that means that they typically start with once upon a time and they end with happily ever after. This week, during these lessons, we're going to focus on stories that are fables. And we've mentioned fables before during class, but I just want to review with you actually what is a fable so that you understand how the flow of a fable works. So what do we actually find in a fable? So first of all, in a fable, it typically has animals that are acting like people. And so, like, for example, the tortoise and the hare, or the lion and the mouse, those would be fables. The setting is usually in one place and it's usually outside, okay? There are typically only 2 to 3 characters, so not a lot of people going in there. There's always one character who is a weaker one, so somebody who's not as strong. You also have a villain and a hero. The most important thing about a fable is that you should be able to understand the moral or the lesson of the story. So fables were written a long time ago to teach people lessons about life, whether it was how to treat people or how to be helpful in your community, how to not be greedy, how to save money, those kinds of things. Okay? So in this lesson, Miss Esther's going to read a fable to you, and then we're going to practice filling out the graphic organizer. And then you are going to listen to a fable, and then you're going to do the graphic organizer on your own. At the end of this lesson, your assignment is to submit the final graphic organizer. Okay? All right, so the story that Miss Esther is going to do with you is called The Fox and the Grape. So the first thing we need to do is read the story. So as we're reading the story, we're looking for setting, character, and then what happens in the beginning, the middle, and the end. So the first thing we're going to do is always read the title. I'm going to grab my highlighter real quick just so I can point out a few things as we are reading. So it's important that we know the title. So The Fox and the Grapes. So clearly one of our characters is going to be a fox. A fox one day spied a beautiful bunch of ripe grapes. They were hanging from a vine trained along the branches of a tree. The grapes seemed ready to burst with juice. The fox's mouth watered as he gazed longingly at them. So far, our only character is the fox. And if I look at this currently, my setting would be somewhere in the forest or the woods. Okay, this paragraph. The bunch hung from a high branch and the fox had to jump for it. The first time he jumped, he missed it by a long way. So he walked off a short distance and took a running leap at it, only to fall short once more. Again and again he tried, but in vain. Now he sat down and looked at the grapes in disgust. What a fool I am, he says. Here I am wearing myself out to get a bunch of sour grapes that are not worth gaping over. And off he walked, very, very scornfully. So, in the next slide, we are going to fill out the graphic organizer. Okay? Okay, scholars, so we're going to use the story, The Fox and the Grapes, to finish this graphic organizer. So you have this graphic organizer in front of you if you are a face-to-face scholar, and you need to fill out the information that Miss Esther is writing in the graphic organizer. If you are a remote scholar, you don't have to. You just need to make sure that you're listening and that you understand so that you can complete the graphic organizer on your own. All right, so the first thing I need to do is tell you where the story takes place. So the setting. So in this story, the setting is outside in the woods. Okay, so if you are a face-to-face scholar, you might want to pause the video and go ahead and write that in the box. Next, I'm going to think about the characters. In this story, very simple. The only character is the fox. There are no other characters in this story. All right, now let's move down to the beginning. What happened in the beginning of this story? So if I want to go back to my story and think about it, I want to say in the beginning, the fox was in the woods and he saw a bunch of grapes. Okay, so make sure you write that down on your graphic organizer. Remember, you can pause this video at any time to write down the information. All right, now let's think about what happened in the middle of the story. So this is typically our biggest section of our graphic organizer. So here in the middle section, I need to explain how the fox tried many times to get the grapes, but that he was not able to reach them. Okay, so in the middle, the fox tried many times to reach the grapes, but he was not able to get them. Okay, you could also write that he was upset that he couldn't reach them. Okay, and then how did this story end? So this story ended with the fox never getting the grapes. So the story ended with the fox never getting the grapes, and he just left. Okay, so here's our story. The setting is outside in the woods. The characters are the fox. The fox was in the woods and he saw a bunch of grapes. The fox tried many times to reach the grapes, but he was not able to get them. And the story ended with the fox never getting the grapes and he just left. So I might want to add here that the fox was in the woods and he saw a bunch of grapes at the top of a tree. That will make it a little bit better for you to understand the story. All right, so if you have not already done this or filled out your graphic organizer, you need to do that before you go to the next slide. So for my face-to-face scholars, you need to take your graphic organizer out and fill in each of these sections on your graphic organizer.